narco-trafficking, where brilliant strategy, lust and unlimited brutality intertwine, Joaquin Guzman, or El Chapo, emerged as an unyielding cartel leader, developing effective methods, infiltrating the Mexican government, and challenging the borders with the United States. In this direct exploration, we will uncover the criminal empire that transcends borders, revealing the complexity behind the imprisonment of the man who shaped the underworld of drug trafficking. After escaping from Mexican prisons twice, El Chapo Guzman now faces the remainder of his days in a maximum security prison. On July 19, 2019, El Chapo entered his cell 75 at ADX Florence in Colorado, marking the end of his status as the most wanted Mexican drug trafficker in the United States. This moment not only signified the end of El Chapo's path, but also the beginning of his life in this miniature version of hell, which he described as Inception. He claimed that these were the most inhumane conditions he had ever faced, suffering from daily headaches, not seeing the sun or breathing fresh air since arriving in the United States, and being subjected to incessant torture. These words are part of a letter written by El Chapo to a judge, sharing his terrifying experiences in the most rigorous prison in the United States. It is evident that he is not enjoying his stay, but the true intrigue lies in the secret administrative measures he is compelled to follow, aspects conveniently avoided by the media. Before we delve into the secret measures and the inevitable fate of El Chapo behind bars, it is crucial to understand why he is enduring torture in a foreign country. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, a name that resonates in history, was one of the biggest drug lords in the 1990s, following in the footsteps of Pablo Escobar. These two iconic figures dominated the drug trade at different times. Escobar, a charismatic mogul who thrived in the limelight; El Chapo, a cunning strategist operating in the shadows of Mexico. His cartel empire generated $3 billion annually, particularly highlighting the infamous Sinaloa cartel. However, after the death of DEA agent Enrique Camarena Salazar at the hands of Mexican hitmen, El Chapo seized the chaos to ascend the cartel hierarchy. Felix Gallardo, in a summit involving all the leaders of the Mexican cartels at the time, appointed El Chapo and Ismael El Mayo Zambada as leaders of the Sinaloa cartel. Over time, he orchestrated two of the most incredible prison escapes of the 21st century. The first escape, on January 19, 2001, from a high-security Mexican prison, was aided by prison guards and workers. El Chapo escaped hidden inside a laundry cart filled with dirty clothes, while a guard electronically opened his cell. The second episode, on July 8, 2015, saw El Chapo escaping from his cell through a 10-meter deep tunnel that led to a construction site a mile away. This tunnel was equipped with artificial lighting, air ducts, and high-quality construction materials. Additionally, a motorcycle was found there which authorities believe was used to transport materials and possibly El Chapo himself. Although El Chapo faced his third imprisonment in 2016, his epic escape and evasion skills earned him a legendary reputation. In 2017, he was extradited to the United States, where he was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years at ADX Florence in July 2019. This prison is known for housing some of the most ruthless criminals of our time. El Chapo, like other inmates, is confined to a solitary cell for 23 to 24 hours a day, allowing only 1 hour in an underground concrete area where he cannot see any distance. ADX Florence, with its strict measures, has 6 different units, and El Chapo is housed in a specific unit known as Unit H. The environment at ADX is highly controlled, with inmates like El Chapo being constantly monitored by cameras, motion detectors, and 1,400 remotely controlled steel doors. Conditions inside this prison are extremely harsh, designed to keep prisoners considered dangerous, out of contact with the outside world. Surveillance is constant, and any escape attempt would be thwarted by motion detectors, cameras, and barbed wire fences patrolled by heavily armed officers. Despite all this, there are units at ADX that allow prisoners to walk freely and interact with others within their range. However, this opportunity is reserved for those who demonstrate good behavior over time. If El Chapo manages to be transferred to one of these units, he will have a better chance of eventually being moved to a less restrictive prison in the US. However, this is a remote prospect, and his defense would likely have to convince a competent judge that he deserves such a transfer based on his exemplary behavior. As El Chapo serves his sentence at ADX Florence, the legacy of his cartel, the Sinaloa Cartel, persists as one of the most powerful drug trafficking organizations, controlling distribution routes in the US and maintaining global influence. The president of Mexico, Obrador, expressed the possibility of considering El Chapo's request to return to Mexico on humanitarian grounds. However, the realization of this return remains uncertain, as the US has no intention of sending him back to Mexico. El Chapo spends most of his time watching cable TV and writing letters to his mother, sisters, and twin daughters, the few family members he is allowed to contact. The president of Mexico, Obrador, suggested that he would consider El Chapo's request to return to the US for humanitarian reasons, arguing that the psychological suffering he is facing there is inhumane. However, the feasibility of this request remains uncertain, as the United States does not seem inclined to send El Chapo back to Mexico for a family reunion. Although El Chapo's fate at ADX Florence seems bleak, his story is far from over. El Chapo's defense seeks opportunities to alleviate the harsh conditions of his imprisonment, appealing for good conduct and the possibility of transfer to less restrictive units. The narrative surrounding El Chapo continues to unfold as other drug trafficking leaders emerge, continuing the legacy of the Sinaloa cartel. As El Chapo serves his sentence, the cartel he helped found remains active and powerful, divided into factions led by El Mayo and his sons known as Los Chapitos. The rise of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, led by Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, also known as El Mencho, highlights the evolving landscape of drug trafficking in Mexico. El Chapo's story continues to intrigue as his life in prison contrasts with the lasting impact of his activities in the drug trade. While he watches cable TV and writes letters in his isolated cell at ADX Florence, the legacy of the Sinaloa cartel and the changes in the drug trafficking landscape continue to shape the narrative surrounding one of the most notorious criminals of all time. One thing is certain, even behind bars, El Chapo's legend continues to defy expectations and shape the trajectory of the criminal underworld. The next act of this intriguing story is yet to unfold. As El Chapo faces the harsh reality of his sentence at ADX Florence, the political landscape and dynamics of drug trafficking in Mexico continue to evolve. His legacy as the leader of the Sinaloa cartel has significantly shaped the landscape of organized crime, but the power vacuum left by his imprisonment has given rise to new challenges and rivals. The relationship between Mexico and the United States remains complex, with ongoing debates about extradition, legal cooperation, and approaches to drug trafficking. While President Obrador expresses consideration for El Chapo's return to Mexico on humanitarian grounds, American authorities may resist any moves in that direction. El Chapo's influence, even behind bars, cannot be underestimated. His contacts, strategies, and history of notorious escapes continue to inspire narratives and speculation. His defense is exploring legal opportunities to alleviate the harsh conditions of his imprisonment and potentially secure a transfer to a less restrictive facility. Meanwhile, the power struggle among the factions of the Sinaloa cartel and the rise of new cartels such as Jalisco New Generation keep violence and instability rampant in the Mexican drug trafficking scene. El Chapo, even far from direct leadership, leaves a lasting legacy that continues to echo through the corridors of crime. The story of El Chapo is a blend of intrigue, crime, and legal dramas that captivate the public imagination. His journey, from the dusty streets of Badiraguato to the cells of a maximum security prison, is a complex narrative that transcends borders and challenges conventional notions of justice and criminality. El Chapo's future remains shrouded in uncertainty, but one thing is clear: his saga marked by spectacular escapes, high-profile trials, and the ever-changing dynamics of the drug trafficking underworld, continues to be one of the most fascinating stories in the world of crime.